Director Mike Flanagan in Dr. Sleep not only evokes the look of The Shining, but the overall ambiance as well. I mean, he got inside the head of Kubrick. That seems scarier than any horror film I can think of. So with this knowledge, being able to tap into the mind of a mad genius, there are a million things I want to ask Flanagan about Kubrick. Like, what would he think of Marvel movies? Welcome to Real School, the film education that may not help you get into the DGA, but you should probably have higher standards for yourself anyways. I'm your host, Michael Wynne Johnson, and today I will be reviewing Dr. Sleep. If you grew up in the 80s and 90s like I did, then you must have survived Cinematic Storm Steven, because there were 26 King adaptations in those 2 decades. His work was inescapable. And if you watched all of those adaptations, you probably came to the same conclusion. They weren't all classics. Occasionally you get a Silver Bullet or Graveyard Shift or Thinner, and not so occasionally those are overlooked because they're not classics like Carrie or Misery or of course The Shining. But I think it's important to recognize these middle-of-the-road B movies that King was a part of. Movies like Needful Things, The Langoliers, or Pet Sematary. Movies that aren't exactly classics, but they are cult classics for a different reason, but they're at least memorable. That weirdly specific niche is Stephen King's wheelhouse. There must be a reason that this man hated the Kubrick classic but didn't say anything about those other lesser films. He likes a little cheese. I bring this up because Dr. Sleep somehow evoked the Kubrick classic and yet somehow also evoked those 80s and 90s cult classic. It's brilliant, subtle homages in filmmaking partnered with not so subtle science fiction and horror. Now, while, in my opinion, that actually makes it a really well-balanced film and extremely entertaining, there's a bit of a catch to that, and that is, it's just not all that scary, which is kind of ironic because that was King's complaint about the original Kubrick Shining. I get that this guy is the master of horror, but if that's the case, what is he afraid of? Aside from possibly switching barbers. Or if he gets a bad haircut, he could just wear a hat, like Rebecca Ferguson's Rose the Hat. Okay, listen, I've done over 320 videos for Real School. Not every segue is going to be gold. But Ferguson played this character extremely coyly, extremely realistically, even though the character wasn't realistic at all. She was part cult leader and part vampire. And I really found her mythology, coupled with the other true not characters, extremely intriguing. These shine succubi really kind of drove the film, but also had that weird energy that King loves. But you know what? It wasn't the new characters I was the most interested in. Being both a spiritual and direct sequel to The Shining, I wasn't sure how much of that world we were going to see again. And it turns out a lot. And that actually means that many of the characters that were in the original Shining may have appeared in the book, but they definitely appear in the movie. And that was kind of a weird and yet pleasant surprise. Okay, I don't usually do this, but because these characters were one of my favorite aspects of the film, I kind of have to. I'm going to talk mild spoilers, so if you don't want to hear anything that's spoilery, then just skip to this point in my video. Okay, ready? Last chance, because I love the fact that we got to see the Torrances again. And not only did we get to see the Torrances again, but we got to see how the filmmakers were going to deal with that. And I actually felt they did the best they could with Alex Esso and Thomas Downing's performances of these two rather iconic characters. But of course, there are a lot of angry haters on the internet about what they did with these two characters. What? Why? Because they weren't Shelley Duvall and Jack Nicholson? Listen, neither one of them was going to come back to this movie for various reasons, but I actually really liked what both of these actors did. Esso did more of an impression of Shelley Duvall, and Downing did an evocation of Nicholson, and trust me, neither one of those is easy to do, but they added some really nice subtle touches to this film. But nothing so touching as seeing Dick Halloran's character return for this as well, and I would have thought it would have been absolutely impossible to replace Scatman Crothers, a man who, both literally and figuratively, is the soul of The Shining, and yet Carl Lumbly did, again, an amazing job considering the circumstances. If I can geek out for a second, and I will because it's what I do in my videos, I just really enjoy the fact that they were both iconic voice actors. Lumbly did Martian Manhunter and Crothers did Jazz in the original Transformers. That's kind of awesome. I don't think the haters online realize how hard it is for these three actors to do what they did. They step into characters that are 30 plus years old. They step into roles that were done by iconic actors in an iconic film, which is actually considered to be one of the greatest films of all time. And not only do they have to give their own spin on the character, but they have to evoke the same kind of energy that those original actors did. good luck. But Lumley steps into the same Scatman Carruthers footsteps, the same kind of energy, the same kind of Force ghost to Obi-Wan that he would have had in the original. I can't be the only one that noticed that. But anyways, Lumley is the for the win. Dr. Sleep might be one of the most surprising films of the year for me because it just seems like an impossibility, but it pays respect to Kubrick's classic. It pays homage to other King works, both cinematically and in his books, and it just gave me the right kind of energy that I needed when I went to go see it. Unexpected. It may have a simple story, it may not have the greatest performances, but it was just kind of what I needed. It is definitely an earn it, and surprisingly, it might be one of my favorite films this year. Poll question, what movie classic would you be okay with if they actually made a sequel to it? As always, leave your answers in the comment section below. But until next time, school's out. Hey Real students, thanks for watching. If you want to subscribe to Real School, click that round Real School logo right beside me. Also click that damn notification bell so you're aware of all of Real School's new content. You can follow me on Twitter, and of course, if you get anything out of Real School, you can always give a little back. Just click the link in the description below or the button down there, and you can become part of my Patreon team.